fair and the best for the people who buy the product. So this book we're going to read together, The Jungle, was written in 1906. It's about the problems with the meatpacking industry. So, we're going to take a look that they're trying to make meat as cheaply as possible. And we're going to read together about some of the problems that brings. Can you hear yourself? Alright, so does everyone have a copy? Ruben, you have a copy?
Here,
Alright, hold on to it, I'll grab it from you later. Guys, ready? Here's what we're going to do. There's 3 sections. I'm going to read them out loud. After section 1, there's questions on the back. We're going to discuss the questions on the back together, okay? So, this is about the meatpacking industry. The first section is about the people working in the meatpacking industry. And how terrible it is for them to work there. Let a man so much as scrape his finger pushing a truck in the pickle room, and he might have a sore that would put him out of the world. All the joints in his fingers might be eaten by the acid, one by one. Of the butchers and foremen, the beef boners and trimmers, and all those who use knives, you could scarcely find a person who had the use of his thumb. They're saying of all these workers in the meatpacking plant, most of their hands are destroyed. Time and time again, the base of it had been slashed till it was a mere lump of flesh against which the man pressed the knife to hold it. The hands of these men would be crisscrossed with cuts until you could no longer pretend to count them or to trace them. They would have no nails. They had worn them off pulling hides. Their knuckles were swollen so that their fingers spread out like a fan. There were men who worked in the cooking rooms, in the midst of steam and sickening odors, by artificial light. In these rooms, the germs of tuberculosis might live for 2 years. Tuberculosis is a terrible lung disease that killed lots and lots of people at this time. Pardon? So what he's saying is that there was so much disease where food was being made that the workers were catching this disease, and that the diseases could spread through the meat. The people would buy at the store. There were the beef luggers who carried 200-pound quarters into the refrigerator cars. A fearful kind of work that began at 4 o'clock in the morning and that wore out the most powerful men in a few years. There were the wool pluckers, whose hands went to pieces even sooner than the hands of the picklemen. For the pelts of the sheep had to be painted with acid, to loosen the wool. And then the pluckers had to pull out this wool with their bare hands till the acid had eaten off their fingers. Does everyone here know what acid is?
Mm-hmm.
It causes. It's like a burning solution.
So what was they burning on the sheep?
They put it on the sheep. They put this acid stuff on the sheep so they could take the fur off, the wool off the sheep easier. But you grabbing it, the acid's getting on your fingers.
Ain't had no blood?
These sheep were already dead.
No, it's already
These were sheep that they would use it because it would separate the wool, and that's why they could use the sheep and turn it into meat. You can't use it with the hair. Make sense? Worst of any, however, were the fertilizer men, those who served in the cooking rooms. These people could not be shown to the visitor, for the odor of the fertilizer men would scare any ordinary visitor at 100 yards. And as for the other men who worked in tank rooms full of steam, and in some of which there were open vats near the level of the floor, their peculiar trouble was that they fell into the vats. And when they were fished out, there was never enough of them left to be worth exhibiting. Sometimes they would be overlooked for days, so all but the bones of them had gone out to the world as germs purely lard.
So what happened?
So what that is saying is there's these vats, there's these kind of these big pools that people could fall in of this burning solution, that would be turned into lard, that's pig fat. And they fall in and they die. And that they won't get fished out, and sometimes the dead body part would go into this fat, lard, which is sold, that you cook with. It would be sold in the stores.
It's like cooking grease.
Cooking grease, but there might be a chunk of dead person in it.
All these people falling in. If they was big pools.
The room is full of steam. So, these are the conditions. Remember we talked about conditions that the people working in with the clothing did. These are a lot worse. There's not safety because it's better for the business. It's going to make more money. They don't have to pay for safety regulations. So, let's look at the questions on the back. Something to point out is this was just 100 years ago. A little more than 100 years ago that people were eating food, and food was coming from places like this. So, just take a minute to write down your answers to question 1 and 2.